In our younger years, visiting friends and family was a common way to stay connected, share experiences, and strengthen relationships. However, as we cross the age of 60, the dynamics of social visits begin to shift. What once felt like a casual drop-in can sometimes become an intrusion, an inconvenience, or even a source of stress, both for the visitor and the host. Have you ever walked into someone's home only to feel an unspoken tension in the air? Or perhaps you found yourself exhausted after a long visit, wondering if it was truly worth it. These are signs that it might be time to rethink frequent social visits. In this guide, we'll explore why reducing unnecessary visits after 60 can actually lead to healthier relationships, emotional well-being, and a more peaceful life. Number 1. Respecting personal boundaries. Mrs. Lawson had always been the kind of person who loved visiting. In her younger years, she would drop by her relatives' homes unannounced, staying for hours, chatting and catching up on old times. But as she got older, she began to notice something strange. The warm welcomes were turning into forced smiles. The conversations felt rushed, and sometimes she sensed that people were relieved when she finally left. People value their space and personal time more than ever. This is something many don't realize until it's too late. Have you ever considered that your visits might be disrupting someone's routine or even causing them stress? It's not that they don't love you. It's that their lives are different now. They have responsibilities, personal struggles, and sometimes they just need quiet. What people really want is connection, but in a way that respects their boundaries. They want to feel free in their own homes without the pressure of unexpected visits. This principle has helped many people maintain strong relationships without overstepping. Those who understand this mindset enjoy deeper respect from family and friends. Instead of being seen as a visitor who overstays, they are appreciated for their thoughtfulness. Knowing this is important, but doing it is even more powerful. Imagine being the kind of person people look forward to seeing, not the one they secretly wish would leave sooner. When you recognize the need for boundaries, you don't just strengthen relationships, you protect your dignity and peace of mind. But what should you do when others don't respect your boundaries? When people show up unannounced at your home or expect your time without considering your own needs, the best approach is kindness with firmness. Let them know in a polite way that while you love spending time with them, you also value your space. This approach not only helps them respect you, but also teaches them a lesson they might not have considered before. This principle also helps you appreciate others more. When you respect their space, you'll start noticing how much they appreciate your presence when you do visit. They'll welcome you with open arms because they know you won't impose or overstay your welcome. It's a win-win for everyone involved. So, what should you do in situations where you feel like you might be intruding? The best approach is simple. Communicate and ask. A quick call or message before visiting can make all the difference. Instead of assuming someone is available, let them confirm it. This small act shows consideration and makes your visit more enjoyable for both parties. Let's look at a story that brings this point to life. Mr. Benson was a retired teacher who loved catching up with his former students and old friends. Every weekend, he would make rounds, stopping by different homes to check on people. At first, everyone welcomed him warmly. But as time passed, they started making excuses. Some wouldn't answer the door. Others would say they were busy. One day, his best friend Mr. Clark sat him down and said, "Benson, we love you, but sometimes we just need our own space." At first, it hurt, but eventually, he realized something. He had been imposing without realizing it. The positive side of this story? Once Benson understood the importance of boundaries, he changed his approach. He started calling before visiting, planned short and meaningful meetups, and even discovered new ways to connect without always showing up in person. His friendships grew stronger because people appreciated his respect for their space. The negative side? If Benson had ignored the signs and continued showing up unannounced, he would have eventually been avoided altogether. Instead of being cherished, he would have become a burden. Thankfully, he learned in time and adjusted. Understanding and applying this principle can change your relationships for the better. If you want to be welcomed and appreciated, respect people's boundaries. If you've ever felt like people are withdrawing from you, maybe it's time to consider this mindset. Want to know the next principle? Subscribe and stay tuned for the next chapter. You won't want to miss it. Number 2. 2. Physical and health considerations. Mrs. Thompson had always been active. Even at 65, she loved walking long distances, visiting old friends, and spending time with her grandchildren. But lately, things weren't the same. After a few hours out, she would feel exhausted. Her knees ached more, and sometimes she even struggled to sleep after a long day of socializing. One day, after a long visit to her cousin's house, she nearly fainted on the way home. It was a wake-up call. As we grow older, our bodies demand more care. Have you ever noticed how tiring it can be just to move around all day, even when doing things you enjoy? Our energy levels aren't what they used to be, and pushing ourselves too hard can have serious consequences. What people really want is to stay healthy and active without overexerting themselves. They want to enjoy their time with others without paying for it later, with pain, fatigue, or even illness. This principle has helped many seniors learn how to balance their social life with their physical well-being. Those who apply it not only feel better, but also enjoy their visits more, because they are well-rested and comfortable. This mindset is important because it teaches us to listen to our bodies. Many people ignore the signs of exhaustion until it becomes a bigger problem. They keep pushing themselves because they don't want to be seen as weak. But is it really worth it if your health suffers? Knowing this is good, but actually applying it is life-changing. Imagine a life where you wake up feeling refreshed instead of drained, where your visits bring you joy rather than exhaustion. That's what happens when you prioritize your physical well-being. But what should you do when people expect too much from you? Some family members or friends may not understand that you can't move around as much as before. They may pressure you to visit often, travel long distances, or engage in physically demanding activities. When this happens, the best approach is honesty. Let them know that while you love spending time with them, you also have to take care of yourself. Those who truly care about you will understand. This principle also helps you appreciate yourself and others more. When you take care of your health, you set a good example. You teach others that self-care is not selfish, it's necessary. And when you see others doing the same, you respect their choices rather than judge them. So what should you do when you feel like socializing but also need to rest? The solution is simple. Plan wisely. Instead of long, tiring visits, schedule shorter and more meaningful ones. Instead of traveling far, find convenient ways to connect, like phone or video calls. Small changes like these can make a big difference. Let's take another story. Mr. Anderson was a retired banker who loved visiting his children and grandchildren. Every weekend, he would take a long trip to see them, spending the whole day playing, chatting, and helping around the house. At first, it was enjoyable, but soon he started feeling the effects. His back ached, his blood pressure spiked, and he often felt too exhausted to even eat properly. His doctor warned him that if he didn't slow down, he could face serious health issues. The positive side of this story? Mr. Anderson listened to his doctor and made changes. He started spacing out his visits, limiting his physical activity, and prioritizing rest. As a result, he felt healthier, had more energy, and his family appreciated his presence even more because he was truly engaged when he visited. The negative side? If Mr. Anderson had ignored the signs, he could have ended up hospitalized, or worse. His desire to be present for his family could have cost him his well-being. Thankfully, he realized in time that taking care of himself was the best way to continue enjoying life with them. Applying this principle will help you live longer, feel better, and enjoy your social life without unnecessary strain. If you've been feeling constantly tired or struggling with aches and pains after visits, it might be time to rethink your approach. Want to learn the next principle? Subscribe and stay tuned. You don't want to miss it. Number 3. Avoiding family tensions. Margaret had always been close to her son, David. As a mother, she believed it was her duty to visit him regularly, check on his family, and offer advice whenever she saw fit. After all, she had more life experience and only wanted the best for them. But lately, things had changed. Whenever she visited, David and his wife seemed tense. Their conversations felt forced, and sometimes they would exchange glances that made Margaret feel like she wasn't entirely welcome. One day, she overheard her daughter-in-law say, "I wish she would call before just showing up." That sentence stung, but it made her think. Family relationships are delicate, and without boundaries, tensions can build up quickly. Have you ever walked into a situation thinking you were doing the right thing, only to realize later that you might have overstepped? Many parents and relatives struggle with this without even knowing it. What people really want is a sense of independence, even from their loved ones. They want their space, their routine, and their way of doing things without feeling like they are constantly being observed or corrected. This principle has helped many families maintain peace and respect, preventing unnecessary misunderstandings. Those who understand this mindset build stronger relationships because they know when to step back and when to step in. This is important because unresolved tensions can turn into long-term resentment. Many family conflicts don't start with big arguments. They begin with small irritations that grow over time. If not addressed, these small issues can create distance between you and your loved ones. But what if you could prevent that from happening? Knowing this is valuable, but applying it is what truly makes the difference. Imagine having a relationship with your family where you feel truly welcome, not just tolerated, where they look forward to seeing you instead of feeling pressured by your visits. That is what happens when you respect their space and understand their needs. But what should you do when someone in the family is acting the wrong way? Maybe they are being rude, dismissive, or avoiding you altogether. The best approach is not to react emotionally, but to take a step back. Sometimes, giving people space makes them appreciate you more. Instead of forcing interactions, allow them to come to you when they are ready. It might feel difficult at first, but in the long run, it strengthens the relationship. This principle also helps you appreciate your family more. When you give them the freedom to live their lives without interference, you start to see their struggles and efforts in a new light. You begin to appreciate their need for privacy, their responsibilities, and their way of managing their home. So, what should you do in situations where you feel like you are becoming an unwanted guest? The solution is simple: communicate and observe. Instead of assuming your visits are always welcome, pay attention to body language and responses. If people seem tired or preoccupied, be understanding. A simple call before visiting can also make all the difference. Let's look at a story that illustrates this point. Mr. Reynolds was a retired businessman who loved checking in on his adult children. He would drop by their homes without warning, stay for hours, and offer advice on everything from parenting to home repairs. At first, they entertained him out of respect, but over time, they became frustrated. His son, Mark, started making excuses to avoid being home, and his daughter-in-law began resenting his frequent advice. One day, Mark finally told him, "Dad, we love you, but sometimes we need our own space." The positive side of this story? Mr. Reynolds took the feedback seriously. He started calling before visiting, shortened his stays, and even began inviting them over instead of always going to them. As a result, their relationship improved, and his family looked forward to seeing him rather than dreading his visits. The negative side? If Mr. Reynolds had ignored the signs and continued visiting as he pleased, his family might have grown distant. The frustration could have built into resentment, leading to a strained relationship that would be difficult to repair. Thankfully, he recognized the issue before it was too late. Applying this principle will help you maintain strong, loving relationships without unnecessary conflicts. If you've ever felt like your visits create tension instead of joy, it might be time to rethink your approach. Want to learn the next principle? Subscribe and stay tuned. You don't want to miss it. Number 4. SUF 4. Economic differences and pressure. Mr. and Mrs. Carter had always enjoyed visiting their friends and family. In their younger years, weekend gatherings and holiday trips were a normal part of life. But as they grew older, they began to notice something. While they still enjoyed visiting, it often came with unspoken expectations. Whenever they visited their son, he would take them out to expensive restaurants, buy extra groceries, and even insist on giving them money before they left. They appreciated the kindness, but they also started to feel like a burden. One day, Mrs. Carter asked, "Are we truly welcome, or do they just feel obligated to host us?" Money can complicate relationships, especially when there are differences in financial stability. Have you ever wondered if your visits are unintentionally putting pressure on your loved ones? Maybe they are struggling financially, but don't want to say no. Or maybe they feel the need to go out of their way to make you comfortable, even when it's inconvenient for them. What people really want is genuine connection, not financial pressure. They want to enjoy visits without feeling like they have to spend money they don't have. This principle has helped many families avoid unnecessary strain, allowing relationships to flourish without financial burdens. Those who understand this mindset create an atmosphere where everyone feels comfortable, no matter their economic situation. This is important because financial stress can damage relationships over time. When people feel obligated to spend money they don't have, it can lead to resentment. A visit that should bring joy might instead become a source of anxiety. But what if you could prevent this from happening? Knowing this is good, but applying it is even more powerful. Imagine a world where you can visit loved ones without worrying about the cost, where your presence is truly the gift, not the expectations that come with it. That's the kind of freedom that comes from being mindful of financial pressures. But what should you do when someone insists on spending too much on you? Maybe they won't let you leave without offering money, or they always feel the need to buy expensive meals when you visit. The best approach is gratitude with gentle honesty. Let them know that their kindness is appreciated, but that you don't want them to feel obligated. A simple, "We love spending time with you, and that's more than enough," can go a long way. This principle also helps you appreciate what others do for you. When you recognize the financial efforts people make, you start to value their hospitality even more. You become more considerate, ensuring that your visits don't put unnecessary stress on them. So, what should you do in situations where economic differences create discomfort? The answer is balance. If you visit someone who is financially struggling, be mindful. Perhaps bring a small gift, contribute to meals, or suggest a simple gathering rather than something expensive. If you're the one with more resources, don't make others feel like they have to match your lifestyle. Instead, create an environment where money doesn't define the relationship. Let's look at a story that illustrates this point. Mr. Harrison, a retired engineer, loved visiting his childhood friend Bill. Bill, however, had been facing financial difficulties since retirement. Every time Mr. Harrison visited, Bill would go out of his way to cook elaborate meals, buy expensive wine, and create an experience he couldn't afford. Mr. Harrison sensed it, but wasn't sure how to address it. Until one day, he found out Bill had taken a small loan just to cover the cost of his visit. That moment changed everything. The positive side of this story? Mr. Harrison decided to change his approach. Instead of allowing Bill to overspend, he started suggesting simple get-togethers, casual coffee visits, walks in the park, or even hosting Bill at his own home. This allowed them to maintain their friendship without financial strain. Their bond grew stronger because it was based on time spent together, not on expensive gestures. The negative side? If Mr. Harrison had ignored the signs and continued visiting without considering Bill's situation, their friendship could have suffered. Bill might have started avoiding him out of financial stress, and what was once a close friendship could have faded away. Applying this principle will help you maintain relationships without financial burdens. If you've ever felt like your visits are causing unspoken pressure, it might be time to rethink your approach. Want to learn the next principle? Subscribe and stay tuned. You don't want to miss it. Number 5. Prioritizing emotional well-being. Eleanor had always been the type to put others before herself. Even in her 60s, she felt it was her responsibility to check in on her family, visit friends, and be present whenever someone needed her. But over time, she started noticing something. After every visit, she felt emotionally drained. Sometimes, she would leave a family gathering feeling unappreciated or even frustrated. Certain conversations would bring up old wounds, and some visits felt more like obligations than genuine moments of connection. One day, after spending an exhausting afternoon at her sister's house, Eleanor sat in her car and asked herself, Why do I keep doing this if it leaves me feeling worse? Not every visit brings joy, and not every relationship is beneficial to your emotional health. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling like you've lost a part of yourself, like you gave your energy but received nothing in return? Many people don't realize that social interactions can either build them up or drain them completely. What people really want is peace of mind. They want to feel valued in their relationships, not obligated. They want visits to be filled with warmth, laughter, and mutual appreciation, not tension, criticism, or emotional exhaustion. This principle has helped many people set healthy boundaries, allowing them to enjoy meaningful connections without sacrificing their well-being. Those who understand this mindset learn to surround themselves with people who uplift them rather than bring them down. This is important because emotional exhaustion can affect your health, mood, and overall happiness. Carrying unnecessary emotional weight from toxic relationships can lead to stress, anxiety, and even physical health issues. But what if you protect yourself from that? Knowing this is helpful, but actually applying it changes everything. Imagine a life where you only invest your time in relationships that bring you joy, where every visit leaves you feeling fulfilled instead of emotionally drained. That's the freedom that comes from prioritizing your emotional well-being. But what should you do when people around you act in ways that affect your peace? Maybe certain family members always bring negativity, or some friends only reach out when they need something. The best approach is to recognize these patterns and adjust your involvement. You don't have to cut people off completely, but you can limit how much of your energy you give to those who don't value it. Protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's necessary. This principle also helps you appreciate the good people in your life. When you focus on those who bring you joy, you become more grateful for their presence. You start to cherish the relationships that uplift you, rather than spending time on those that drain you. So what should you do in situations where you feel emotionally exhausted after a visit? The answer is self-awareness and boundaries. If a certain relationship consistently leaves you feeling bad, it's okay to visit less frequently. If certain conversations always lead to stress, it's okay to change the subject or remove yourself from them. Prioritizing your well-being means being intentional about who and what you allow into your emotional space. Let's look at a story that illustrates this point. James, a retired teacher, had always been close to his childhood friend, Robert. But as they grew older, James started noticing a pattern. Every time they met, Robert would complain about life, criticize people around him, and bring up negative topics. James often left their meetings feeling mentally drained. One day, he realized that he wasn't looking forward to their visits anymore. He cared about Robert, but he also knew that their friendship was no longer bringing him happiness. The positive side of this story? James decided to take control of his emotional well-being. Instead of cutting Robert off completely, he reduced the frequency of their meetings and made sure to spend more time with people who brought him joy. This shift made a huge difference in his overall happiness and mental peace. The negative side? If James had ignored how he felt, he would have continued feeling drained after every visit. Over time, this could have led to resentment, or even worse, impacted his health and mood in other areas of his life. Thankfully, he recognized the importance of prioritizing his emotional well-being before it was too late. Applying this principle will help you protect your peace, enjoy your social life more, and build relationships that truly nourish you. If you've ever felt emotionally drained after a visit, it might be time to rethink who you invest your time in. Want to learn the next principle? Subscribe and stay tuned. You don't want to miss it. As we journey through life, the way we interact with family and friends must evolve. What once felt natural, dropping by unannounced, staying for long visits, or giving unsolicited advice, might no longer be welcome. The truth is, after 60, visiting around too often can sometimes do more harm than good. Not because people don't love you, but because life changes, and with those changes come new boundaries, responsibilities, and expectations. Looking back at what we've discussed, we see the importance of being mindful about how, when, and why we visit others. We talked about physical and health considerations, recognizing that as we age, our bodies demand more care. Long visits, excessive travel, and overexertion can take a toll on our well-being. Prioritizing rest and balance ensures we remain healthy enough to enjoy time with our loved ones without unnecessary strain. We explored avoiding family tensions, understanding that even the closest families can experience friction when personal boundaries are not respected. Instead of forcing interactions, we learned the value of stepping back, giving space, and ensuring that visits are genuinely appreciated rather than tolerated. We discussed economic differences and pressure, acknowledging that not everyone is in the same financial situation. Sometimes visits, though well-intentioned, can create financial burdens for those hosting us. By being mindful of this, we can ensure our presence is a source of joy, not stress. We emphasize prioritizing emotional well-being, reminding ourselves that not every relationship is beneficial. Some visits can leave us feeling drained, unappreciated, or emotionally exhausted. Protecting our peace means surrounding ourselves with those who uplift us and learning to set healthy boundaries. Each of these principles has helped countless people maintain happier, healthier relationships. But the most important lesson of all is awareness and balance. Visits should be meaningful, not forced. Time spent with loved ones should bring joy, not exhaustion or obligation. When we approach relationships with wisdom and sensitivity, we create spaces where both we and the people we care about can thrive. So what should you do next? Reflect on your interactions. Think about the relationships in your life and ask yourself, are my visits bringing joy, or am I unintentionally causing stress? If necessary, adjust. A simple change in approach can make all the difference. Life is about meaningful connections, not just frequent ones. Choose quality over quantity, peace over pressure, and joy over obligation. If you've enjoyed these insights, subscribe and stay connected. There's always more to learn about building stronger, healthier relationships.